Hello, I'm Stuart Preston, and this is the Stoned Ape Reports, where I have conversations with those who have changed their lives with the power of psychedelics. Quick announcement, I now have a book out titled The Grief Trip, How I Learned to Heal with Grief and Psychedelics. You can find it at www.thegrieftrip.com. 100% of proceeds go to the Ian Preston Memorial Fund to help support mental health and suicide prevention. Okay, back to the podcast. In this episode, I had the honor of speaking with a friend of mine, Andre. We, unfortunately, share a similar story of loss, grief, and learning to heal with the help of psychedelics. And Andre shared some great insight here, and I really enjoyed our conversation. So let's hear from Andre. Andre, I really appreciate you coming here and talking to me. You and I have met a couple times. We're here in the Phoenix community, and you're somebody whose opinions on this stuff matter, but unfortunately, you're also somebody that has a similar story to mine in terms of loss and grieving and psychedelics. So we'll get into that. But first of all, thank you for coming on and sharing your story.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, awesome. So I guess since I mentioned it, maybe we could just get right into your story of healing. I mean, I guess your life was going along somewhat normally, if there is such a thing, and then tragedy struck. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I'll try and give a quick recap of my 39 years here. So I was born and raised in Utah, and I grew up in a Mormon community, and led a pretty normal life. Went on my mission, went to Japan, came back, moved to Arizona. This is about 2003 now, 2004. And I got married, and then we had our first son, and turns out we have a genetic condition that is carried down both our family lines that nobody really knew about, called alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. And our son got the short end of the stick genetically and needed a liver transplant. So he was born very jaundiced, and it took a while for us to figure out exactly what was going on. So now we're in about 2008 is when he's born. And at this time, we're still going strong and living, everything that I should have been doing in my life up to that point. As a somebody in the faith.
Right.
And so we ended up spending a lot of time in the hospital, and we lost him. He got an infection, and he was about 2 weeks from his first birthday.
Oh, wow.
And having children, and that's just been such like a core part of who I am. I have a very strong nurture component that I inherited from my mom. And it was devastating. I can't overstate. I mean, we obviously, when we met, as soon as we both kind of realize that connection, there's just an instant understanding, I think.
There really is. It's when you meet somebody who's been through this kind of a loss, there's a little connection there that you see instantly that other people just can't quite understand, and there's like a little bit of freedom to say, oh good, this person gets it.
Yeah. And so anyway, so that happened, and I felt like, I've explained it before, that it felt like I was climbing this ladder my whole life, rung by rung, decision by decision, stacking this, structure of my life. And that happened, and I fell off, and I landed on my butt, and it was just so jarring. I really had to restart my life from there, and everything looked different. Everything felt different. I at that time really struggled with my faith, and I read a lot and pondered a lot, and there's a lot that goes into that, but just all is to say that it was just such a large domino effect of forcing me to live my life differently, and it instigated a lot of change, and it was very, very difficult. Obviously I went through a lot of therapy, a lot of counseling, going through just the feelings of what I felt like should have happened. I had assurances, right, that I had led my life up to this point that things would work out, and they didn't. And and that's not just to blame, that's an easy out. There's a lot more to it. But anyway, that really tipped my life on its side. I soon afterwards started just really questioning everything, looking at life again. And I found myself not being real content with the belief system that I had grown up with.
Did you feel betrayed by it at all?
The more I looked into it, and just it was kind of a twofold path. I had, on the one hand, the intense therapy I was going into and really examining the constructs that I had built around my image and what I value and kind of who I am. And then going down this other intellectual path of really understanding kind of what my beliefs were. Mm-hmm. And they just kind of collided, and it was very, I don't know that I harbored a lot of anger. I think I did, but it was easy for me to just kind of step away from that. Mm-hmm. And I mean, in my head, leaving a whole community is very challenging on its own. And, I don't want to spend a ton of time on that. That's been said.
Yeah, that's a challenge.
But yeah, that led to a lot of depression on many fronts. Life was very difficult for me. Leaving the church, leaving the community, confronting, my family about that was very, very, very hard. And then soon afterwards, the marriage was starting to crumble. Kind of everything was kind of falling apart.
Did your wife leave the church with you?
Yeah, I was fortunate that we both were on the same page. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm still going through lots of therapy now, going into, after 2010, 2011, and I reach a low, and I have an attempted suicide. I kind of drove out into the desert, and I thought, this is it for me. I really can't deal with this anymore. And I came out of that, though. I checked myself in to inpatient location, and I did a lot of work, and that led to a lot of medication. And they put me on a lot of antidepressants, and I really, really didn't like that. It's a shotgun approach to the mind, and it just dulls everything. There's a lot of behavioral therapy, talk therapy, right? That works hand in hand. But I found like I had gotten a lot of benefit out of talk therapy, but the medication was, I could tell, not helpful at all. So a friend of mine introduced me to marijuana and said, you should try this. And at that time, I was really willing to try anything. So I did, and it really, really helped me.
And you were willing to try anything, but I mean, at this point, you had led, and I don't want to be too flippant, but this is the words that came into my head, but you had led kind of the good Mormon life and probably were not doing drugs in general.
Exactly. Yeah. I had no idea. I mean, when I first tried marijuana, I instantly had this moment where I remembered all of these concerts in my life I had gone to where I didn't quite know what that stink was. And it just snapped, like, like 4 Primus concerts that I'd been to. I'm like, oh, that's what that was.
Funny.
Anyway, so that was a really kind of bright point for me, where I was able to walk away from very heavy medication by just occasional use of marijuana, which would really help. I kind of describe it as there's like this whirlpool of depression you can start sinking into, where it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. Mm-hmm. And it feels overwhelming, and it feels like hopeless, right? And so it kind of in those periods is when it would almost act like a lifesaver and pull me right out and show me joy. Wow. And that's, for me, what it was really about, is reminding. And that's, I mean, I would say if there's a theme to my experiences and why we are talking right now, is because these different chemicals have been able to show me joy and remind me that it's there for me to kind of manifest. And, it's I used to laugh kind of at the wooey language that's used here. But I think it's really true. It shows you a light at the end of the tunnel, which then changes your belief system such that you know that that light is attainable. It's within reach, because for a second you're there, and then you know you can climb out of whatever it is that you've sunk into.
So it kind of teaches you that there is some joy to be had in life.
Yeah, that was my very first experiences, and that's what really made me interested. Up to that point, I had believed sort of the stereotypical, this is your brain on drugs. And as with anything, the weapon to that is knowledge, right? If you understand, then it gets rid of all of that uncertainty. And so the more I started learning about it and experiencing, I needed to get rid of those negative belief systems that I had that were all purely political propaganda. Mm-hmm. Right. I had zero facts about any of how any of this worked. So much talk about neurotoxins and poisoning. And yes, there are things that do that. But for the vast majority of what we're talking about, no, it's completely healthy. It's way better than many of the things that are commonly bought in a grocery store.
Yeah. Like from your old faith, they wanted you to not have caffeine, right? And caffeine can be pretty detrimental along
coffee.
with sugar.
I'll correct you. Coffee, hot drinks. Coke is fine.
Oh yeah. Another friend of mine told me that. They said the grand group, the board of directors said Coke is fine. Coffee is the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I didn't want to derail you there, but yeah, it's, I like your notion that once you truly understand and you gain that knowledge, you start to find out what the truth is around some of these things. Yeah.
Right. And a lot of that hesitation or fear starts to dissipate when you really biologically understand what's happening.
And so did you dig in? I mean, frankly, there's some things that I don't understand biologically. How many times have I heard 5-HTNA or whatever the receptors are, and neurotransmitters, and smart guys like you and other people will talk about this stuff, and I'll nod my head like, yeah, that's what's happening in my brain. And then 10 minutes later, I'm like, I have no idea what those guys were talking about. So
when you say smart guys like me, like I'll read a book and I'll be able to spit out a line somebody else wrote.
Yeah, no, you're being humble, but I know that you dig further into it, so it's good, because knowledge is power, as people say. But it's a lot of the stuff can be biologically, chemically, physically so complicated that a lot of people like me have a hard time tracking exactly what's happening, and then we're kind of like, well, I know the benefits I'm getting from it. That's good enough for me. Yeah. Okay. So the marijuana, the cannabis, helped you discover that that you are allowed to have joy, that there is some joy to be had in this sea of grief, which for me was a great big lesson also, to know that there's still happiness to be had and enjoyed and found, is a great big lesson for somebody who's in really, really deep grief.
Oh, that is such a good point.
Yeah. It's so what came next? Is there more about that part, or what what came next for you?
So for me, after that, as I learned more about cannabis, and then I was exposed to the world of other, for instance, mushrooms, other substances. Right. So I wanted to learn as much as I could. And I wanted to pace myself. So I knew that I was interested in psychedelics. I knew that I had very beneficial experiences. And for me, a lot of this also comes from a place of therapy first. Yes, there's recreational aspects to all of this, but the first time I'm dipping my toes in any of this is purely therapeutic. What can I get out of this? How can I help this make me be a better person or a better version of myself, I should say. Yeah. So I knew I wanted to explore psilocybin next, but I wanted to be comfortable with cannabis. It took me a while to really figure out what was what. What thresholds are effective and how not to be sick and how to really, I guess you could almost make an analogy of like somebody typically going to college and learning how to drink and making mistakes and too much. And, and then you come out a 30-year-old that has a glass of wine on a weekend.
Yeah, there you go.
So I wanted to feel that level of comfort with cannabis before I really started moving up. So I waited a little while. I did more research so that I would have one thing that I've learned as I've been exploring all of this is that your own mind, the weeds in your own mind can really become toxic. And so if there's anything that any doubts that I have or any fears, I've learned that I need to get to the bottom of that. I can't go into an experience with those questions open. Like, is this really safe? Or is this the right amount? If I have those kinds of doubts, then that acts as a trampoline effect in the experience.
In a negative way.
In a negative way, yeah. You can really kind of spin into a place of fear when you don't know the answers, and then you have this ego chattering in your ear, like, no, you shouldn't, like, I'm losing control right now. This was a bad mistake. All of the negative things kind of, in my experience, will get thrown at me, and it can be unsettling. I have to kind of talk myself down from that. But I've learned to go into the experiences with as much knowledge as I can, so that I know what to expect, and I can start to bring an intention into that experience, and then I find that they're really, I don't have many bad experiences, and a bad experience is a hard lesson for me. So anyway,
so you count a hard lesson as a bad experience?
No, I would say the other way around. What I would quote as having a difficult psychedelic experience. Typically will be something that's hard for me to let go, or hard for me to come to terms with. Letting go is usually what it is all about for me.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
But anyway, moving into mushrooms, I decided, I'm ready for this. I think this is around 2015, 2016. And I should say I came out of the church very much atheist, very much, okay, if this isn't true, nothing's true.
So you went full, nothing exists.
Full pendulum swing, yeah.
I'm on my own. I'm going to believe in my rational mind.
And I really embraced nihilism. That was like an endearing thing amongst my close friends. It was, kind of a dark place.
Right.
So a close friend of mine invited me to have a mushroom experience with him. He would host me and take care of me. And he's a, very close friend of mine. So I said, of course. So I went to work, normal day, came back and went straight to his place. And just in my work clothes, I sat in his hammock in the backyard, and with a full 3.5 grams, had one of the most impactful experiences I've had.
And that was your first time? That was
my first time. Yeah, my first time. Yep. So I had some I'll take you through a few of the really impactful moments that I had. I remember it as I had just taken it, and I was kind of waiting for the onset. I was laying in his hammock, and I just remember the sky being the colors were just so much vibrant, right? I'm looking at power lines, a pine tree, and a kind of a sunset with no clouds, right? It's kind of unspectacular. But in the moment, it was one of the most beautiful things that I'd seen.
Yeah.
And it, again, going back to just the joy that you're able to experience. So as I was laying there, I had, I really didn't know what was going to be coming up. I obviously done my research and had prepared myself as best I could. And what started coming up was I felt much more aware of my body. And I was aware of this lump in my throat. And I was aware that lump was anger and pain around just the events of the last several years of my life.
Yeah.
And I realized that was baggage that I was carrying. And I had this image of myself with 2 big suitcases, just walking around carrying this pain and anger in my throat. And I realized I can just let this go. This isn't real. It doesn't exist. It's me holding on to something that is nothing. And I'm just, it was like my own prison. And I just realized in that moment, I don't have to carry this. And then instantly that lump was gone, and it felt like I could breathe. And I had been so choked for so long. I didn't realize that I could not have that I can live my life this way. And this is way better than this choked down, painful existence that I had, that I had blinders on. I really wasn't aware of. And I now see that this is like a layer of depression onion I peeled off.
Yeah.
And that realization to me was one of the first times that I realized that part of I think the most powerful part of these experiences are the opportunities we have to recreate our reality. So it showed me, I was in this old way of being, and it showed me a new way of being. And then I could reconstruct my reality to go forward in life with that new way of being.
Yeah, without those bags.
Without those bags, exactly. I had another vision where I like the term vision. I love the term vision for my background. I imagined myself on my deathbed, and it wasn't a scary thought. It was a peaceful thought. I had my family around me, and I knew that, I was approaching the end of my life. And I remember the image of dandelions, and each dandelion being a joyful memory or experience that I had had. And I remember envisioning my life as having a big armful of all these dandelions, thousands of them, and being content at the end of my life that I had all of these beautiful, wonderful experiences. And that was the thing that I could bring with me if there's anywhere I'm going, right? That was the most important, most valuable thing. It wasn't the stuff. It wasn't anything other than the time that I had with the people that I love.
Wow. That's powerful.
Yeah, that one really hit me hard. And it was like a bell that was just a gong was hit that kind of then reverberated through, backwards and forwards in time from that moment of what are you doing? What is important to you? And that helped me to find a little bit more of I mentioned nihilism, right? A little bit more reason to be happy and find meaning in life.
Yeah.
Where I just came out of such an extreme experience that left me feeling like life is meaningless and existence is pain, which I still kind of believe. In a different way, though.
Suffering.
Suffering, right.
Yeah.
So after that, and that one hit me so hard. I went online and I found this picture that somebody drew of a dandelion, and I put it up on my wall. And I had this like a goal of, I want to find a picture each time I have a meaningful experience. And that lasted like 2 or 3 times. And then I gave up on that, but it's a fun thought.
I was going to ask you if you have dandelion art all over your place now.
I do. I've got a special one that brings me back to that time.
Yeah. Nice.
After that, I remember he brought out like some speakers and put some music on, and I had heard music. It felt like I was hearing it for the first time, and it's my favorite playlist, but it sounds so good, and I'm hearing things I'd never heard. It was just a whole new experience. And then I couldn't stop talking. I'm very introverted and have a hard time sharing. And I talked his ear off until midnight.
Wow.
It was a wonderful experience.
Yeah, that sounds very transformational. So, before I go forward with the questions, do you have any other experiences that were important to your therapeutic experience with all this that you wanted to share?
Well, I guess there's
probably a million, but
there's one that stands
specific
out.
Ones that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, there's one that stands out to me. A few years later, decided it would be okay for me to try DMT. So same same shaman buddy of mine, introduced me, and that moment swung me from that atheist to a spiritualist.
So even through the mushroom experience, you still brought with you that sense of atheism, of nothing, and then this DMT experience altered that.
Yeah, and I would almost say that the mushroom experience kind of left me a little conflicted, because I had just believed that there was nothing, and then part of I didn't really even talk about it, but part of that experience is a transcendence, or a feeling of one, and that's I think it's beautiful that is such a common feeling that people go through.
Yeah.
That you're almost ascending into nirvana, and that we're all the same thing, and it's all love. All of the stereotypical trip reports, right? That left me a little unsettled, honestly. Like, well, what's going on here? Is this a metaphysical thing now? And I really wasn't sure, but I kind of had an open mind, but I knew that I really didn't believe in the old belief system that I had. So I was really struggling framing a new one. I still am a bit. It's just little bits and pieces. But after that experience, I remember when I had that, I was instantly in a different place. I mean, it's, seconds. Mm-hmm. And I remember just the intense geometry and color and depth, almost like there was more dimensions that were laid open before me on top of this one. And I recall going through everything in the room, going through, if you could imagine, filters on Instagram, just somebody swiping my reality with plastic, concrete, purple, wireframe, neon, everything, right? As I'm people call this the tunnel, as I'm going up and bursting through into this other dimension, I should say. I don't know. Yeah. So I find myself in this other place, and I imagine my eyes are wide open, but I'm not seeing what's in front of me. I'm in a different place, and I feel this entity, and this entity notices my presence. And this is all, I don't know, telepathic. Yeah. And I remember this thinking, this is so beautiful. I'm just awestruck. Like my jaw's open wide, and I'm probably staring forward into nothing, but I'm seeing this incredible geo-iridescent landscape. And I remember thinking, I wish I could just take a picture of this, and I would paint it. I would figure something out so that I can bring this back and have it as a memory and share this beauty. And I remember trying to look, after I had that thought, looking at some of the things that were just amazing, and my perception would blur where I was focusing. And I realized that I felt like I was being blocked. Like this entity did not want me to take anything away.
Interesting. And
I engaged in this dialogue with this, what felt to me almost like a god, of me pleading my case. Please let me remember some of this. I want to take this back. I want to make something out of this. And this being saying no. And it was almost, there wasn't a good reason that I knew of. It was almost just like, I don't want you to. And so but I kind of countered and really persisted. And I could tell that this thing was amused by that. And we continued this kind of, like not arguing, but me really convincing my case, trying to persuade this thing to let me remember something and not blur my vision. Because I can see all around my peripheral, it's crystal clear, but right where I want to look to take a snapshot, I can't. And so this kind of banter goes back and forth, and time starts slipping, and the effects start to wear off pretty quick, in 10 minutes or so. Yeah. And so I remember feeling like I was sliding down, that this place that I was at just turned into a really steep slope, and I was slipping. And this being was, again, amused by this, but reached out to me and offered some things to me and said, next time, light a candle so you don't feel so you have a point, an anchor to look at, so you don't feel confused or dazed or not ready. And like 3 or 4 other advice for next time I do this.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It was really weird. Very specific things. I wrote all this down afterwards, and they all turned out to be true and helpful. And towards the end, this thing said, here's some visuals, like offering them to me, like tossing, like Zeus from the mountain, throwing me these gifts, these hallucinatory gifts down below as I'm slipping. Here, enjoy these. You'll have a good time, and come back next time. We'll talk again. Right.
Yeah.
I'm coming down, and then I'm coming back into reality, and I have just these beautiful kind of three-dimensional, the most lucid CGI you could imagine of just kind of mist and flowing around me. I was really awestruck by it. And as you come back in, it's almost like you're, I don't know, I would liken it to like what people describe astral projection as. You come back into your body and are just suddenly aware that, oh, I've got a body, and I can feel my face, and I can feel my legs, and I can move around. And then it's, maybe 10 minutes after that of just really this beautiful body feeling, and just feels like a warm blanket. And that was so profound for me. It felt so real, more real than real. And that cracked open my mind to, there's a lot going on in this universe that you're just not even scratching the surface of. So have an open mind.
Yeah. And so that open mind at that point, maybe no longer an atheist. Not that I care. Yeah. I'm not a religious absolutely. Person myself, but at that moment you're kind of like, okay, the atheism thing, that's not making sense either now.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So these are amazing experiences. And first of all, thanks for sharing those. How you said you went into this with a therapeutic mindset with the psychedelics.
Yeah.
How have these experiences and others helped you in a therapeutic way, specifically maybe in terms of your grieving process, in terms of the resulting depression that you experienced, any of that? How do you feel like these experiences, like you've come out the other end of these in a different or even possibly transformed way?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Thanks for asking that.
Yeah.
One of the things that really touched me when I was going through like CBT, like talk therapy, was the concept of the inner child. Are you familiar with that?
I am not intimately familiar with it, but I have read about it.
Okay. So it's essentially, you go through several exercises where you'll, for instance, write letters to yourself.
Yes.
Or you create this tool in your mind that you have a separate self inside of you. That's the child that represents everything good about you, basically. The innocence, the love, the joy, all of the things that you feel like you would have had as a child that maybe get dulled as an adult.
Yeah.
You give that person the ability to experience emotion that's difficult for you as an adult.
Interesting.
For whatever reason. And so you can then create this tool to be able to comfort yourself and forgive yourself. And I've got a daughter, and when I think of my daughter, there's nothing like, I love her unconditionally.
Yeah.
I've realized that that's something that I need to do for myself, that I am my dad's son, my mom's son, right? Like I am this person to other people. And I almost feel like this is so unique to me, but everybody has this.
Yeah.
Or can have this, right? If not with immediate family, with yourself. And I think, as you know, grief comes in waves. I remember having to return to work after losing my son, and it was so hard. I would get hit by a huge wave and have to go cry in a room, and then come back out hoping that, everybody knows what's going on. And I'm trying my best to get through it. It's very, very difficult. And and then you try and use all the tools that you've got and try and get yourself in a good mindset. And then, a few weeks later, you get smacked again by just driving, something is going to come up. And over time, those kinds of things, they start to wane. And I think over more time, what started happening is I didn't avoid those. I almost looked forward to those waves because it reminded me that there is a connection, that it was all real, that, I've been really transforming that or trying to change those feelings of hurt, anguish, and pain into love.
Yeah.
Just love. That's all that I need and have room for. The past is the past. And so I don't want to torture myself. And that is what I feel so profoundly, with the help of a number of these things that we've been talking about.
Yeah, that's a powerful, powerful lesson. Hurt, anguish, and pain transformed into love. That's interesting. That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess just to tie the knot on that question is, yes, I feel those feelings, and it recharges me. It reminds me that in my day-to-day, I don't feel that. I may be stuck in work, or there's just all the things that in life that really drag us down. And it's very helpful to me to be able to, I guess, put it in a different context. Like going to church is what people profess to really be that recharging, cleansing, invigorating. And the more I lean into this spirituality, I absolutely see the value of prayer, of making your intentions manifest out loud, in creating a way that may not be obvious to you, but doing everything you can to accomplish a goal or achieve a mindset, and then you can actually achieve that. So I feel like there is a lot of truth. I've come full circle in a lot of ways for some of what my beliefs were.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic, the revelations you get.
Yeah.
From the insight from these experiences that are mystical, near religious, and you start to understand prayer, connection to meditation and visions, and like you said, manifesting and these different things. They all seem to be, some of the Eastern teachers and Western leaders who became Eastern style teachers say that it's all the same, whether you're following Jesus or Buddha, that the way is the way is the way.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I found a lot of peace and joy and satisfaction in connecting those dots.
Yeah, awesome. So if somebody out there is listening, working with their own grief, and they're curious about using psychedelics, in a therapeutic way, like you've described here, what if any advice might you have to give them if they came to you and said, "Hey, Andre, I lost somebody close to me, and I've tried talk therapy with good results. I've tried, pharmaceuticals with whatever kind of results, but I'm interested in working with psychedelics with my grief." Do you have any advice? I guess I should throw out my legal caveat here. We're not recommending anybody out there does drugs. If drugs are illegal where you are, please don't do them. And psychedelics are certainly not for everybody. And don't think that if you're experiencing deep grief that you can go eat a bag of mushrooms and feel all better and feel, joy and happy. There's a lot involved in all this that's much bigger than any of this. But in that context, so back to the question, in that context, Andre, what, somebody came to you and we're suffering from grief, considering working with psychedelics, would you have some advice for them?
Yeah. Thank you for the disclaimer too. I would spend the next 15 minutes talking through all the other tools and things that are available.
Yeah.
And if you haven't exhausted those tools or at least tried them, then I would definitely recommend there's tools to use, bigger tools.
Yes.
And so if you can really learn how to talk through feelings, emotions, and recognize what is going on now, you're going to be much better prepared to accept and understand what may happen through a normal mushroom experience, for instance. So
good point.
Yeah. Also, getting that out of the way, though, I feel like I really, in preparation for this talk, I was just thinking through, what has worked for me. And I remember I go through phases of motivation around journaling and self introspection.
Yeah.
And I pulled out a journal where I had made a lot of notes about this, and it really started coming back to me. And I really feel like just the act of writing and really trying to at least making an attempt at understanding what it is you're trying to get to the bottom of, or what it is you'd like, whatever that is just setting up an intention, which there's, several controllables that you absolutely need to be aware of and prepare for. And I think that's one of the most important ones, is having the knowledge, so that you don't have these weeds of doubt in your mind as you're entering the experience as much as possible. There's unknowns. You can't know all the unknowns, but you can do enough work to pretty much not have that be a bad impact.
Yeah.
And then writing through and just spending some time with yourself on really what's going on. What are the even feelings that I'm having right now? What are they about? I think just maybe even trying to meditate and trying to listen to your mind a little bit and set yourself up for being open to anything.
Yeah. And are you talking about, this is all preparation before even going into an experience?
Yeah. Before going into an experience, I would absolutely recommend having somebody with you, because especially if you've never done it before, it's a comfort knowing that there's somebody that can be nearby if you feel like you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so it's not because of something is going to happen. It's so that you can put aside that fear of, well, I'm taken care of. Like I have an anchor to reality here, so I can not worry about that and just focus on myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a vital point, is to have somebody around that is, like you said, that anchor into reality. Because those weeds, would you call them weeds of doubt?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Those sure can take over unless you have that connection into reality where you feel like, okay, there's, no matter what, I've got somebody here to take care of me.
Yeah. And they can help talk. They can even just help listen to whatever it is that you need to process. And just the act of speaking it out loud is often enough, is the journey. And so when you have somebody there that can help, kind of hear that and offer kind of feedback and guidance. And though I've never been in a situation like this, talk you out of irrational or things that maybe aren't real. There isn't this horrible entity, scary thing around the corner. You're safe. Everything's okay. That's also very helpful.
Yeah, I agree. So what do you think is the key to having a good healing psychedelic experience? I mean, I think you've really laid out a bunch there, preparing, meditation, having intention. Are there any technical details that you think somebody should prepare themselves for or with before getting into this?
Yeah, I would say another good lifeline, when you're in the ocean of the experience being tossed around, is, I think, like having comforting music. Nothing too intense, something that's familiar, something that's peaceful, something that something maybe low key, that can also really help paint the experience. That, I think, adds so much color when you've got that additional sensory component of the experience.
Interesting. Do you have a recommendation or an opinion on music with versus without lyrics?
I definitely prefer without. Lyrics are distracting for me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And what's your view on integration then? So you've talked about preparing, meditation, intention, those kind of things, work, getting rid of your weeds of doubt. And then during the experience, experiencing it, maybe having somebody to talk to, having some good music. And then when the whole thing's over, do you integrate? Do you think integration is something that is beneficial, not beneficial? What do you have any opinions on integration?
Yeah, absolutely. I was about to get to that. I'm glad you brought it up. I think that is really where you turn it into something that is valuable from an experience that you went through to something that will change you.
Great way to put that.
I try and write down as much as I can, or come out of it and just be quiet and try and get on paper what I felt and what, thoughts that may have come up, and maybe goals and things that I want in my life, because often those will become a lot more clear as I go through that experience, or towards the end, I'll have a much clearer sense of of the new version of myself that I want to build. And so I find it valuable to start writing that down, and just, that's kind of my fertile ground that I can then continue pulling inspiration from, and molding into what I want and manifesting what I want. God, that is such a buzzword, manifesting.
Yeah.
I cringe saying it, but I can't think of a better way of describing receiving some knowledge. Yeah. And then actually changing the core parts of your life into to reflect that to your everyday existence.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I am resistant to every buzzword out there, from shadow to manifesting to any of it. But it's always because sometimes people push it too hard and it ends up being part of people's marketing plans. Mm-hmm. But there's so much truth to all of them.
I don't know, we're on time. Do we have like a time for like a 5-minute?
Yeah.
Okay. I just remembered, as I was describing kind of restructuring your core belief system, I was reminded of a very, very challenging experience that I had a few years ago. I won't go, it's a kind of a long story. And it's kind of intense, so I won't get into too much of it in the details, but I had an experience where I believed that I was dying. There was no pocket of my mind that believed that I was in the reality we are in now. Mm-hmm. I fully believed that I was or had died. And it's hard to overstress how real that was. And I know this can be scary to hear for people that maybe have not had these kinds of experiences. However, that very strong experience, I came out of that. It was almost a death and a rebirth. Mm-hmm. And I felt so much joy at having the opportunity to be alive and to be a part, such an integral part of my daughter's life. It really helped. I don't know. It gave me a new core foundation of why I am who I am. Yeah. Not why I am here, why I choose to be here. And I can't describe how much of a firmware update that was for me. Wow.
It sounds like that had some form of DMT involved, if I had to guess.
Exactly right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. Amazing. And so did you have more on that?
I came out of that very shaken, but it changed again. There's very much a line in the sand for my life for the Andre version 39.8 that was a major upgrade from before that, where I would say I had an indifference to my existence. I'm neutral about it, right? I'm not on the negative end. I'm not thinking about death. I'm not dwelling on it. I'm not suicidal. I'm not thinking about anything like that. But I'm also, on the other hand, not overly ecstatic to be here. I don't have if I'm on an airplane and it goes down, it's fine, right? That's life.
I think that is a side effect of losing a child, in my own opinion.
Oh yeah, that's a really good observation. I hadn't considered it in that light. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
It's like it takes away the fear. Like, well, what else can happen?
Yeah, what are you going to do to me? I used to be afraid of scorpions. You know what I mean? Here in Arizona, and now I see a scorpion. Like, hey, what are you going to do to me?
You're going to sting me. It's going to hurt.
Yeah, you're going to sting me. Bring it.
Right. That's such a good point. Yeah. So I don't know what else after that, but yeah.
So 39.8, Andre. How are you doing today? I mean, you say you're neutral, not suicidal, not.
Yeah, I didn't finish, but that part of me died. And the new birth, the new me was, I am lucky to be here. I am so lucky to be able to be interacting in my life right here with the people that I love that are in my life. I'm so fortunate.
Awesome. That is fantastic. I love it. I love it. So I think that's probably a good point to stop here, but is there anything else you had on your mind that you want to get out there before we wrap up?
Well, I thank you for the opportunity to chat with you.
Yeah, of course.
I like talking about my story. I find that it's very hard for me to talk about things. It's very hard for me to share, but on this topic, since it is so personal to me and it's affected me so strongly, I'm not talking about drugs. I'm not talking about partying. This has helped me, shaped my existence and be a much better person. So I'm grateful to the people in my life that have helped me along the way. And I would hope that our conversations here, if there's anybody out there that any of this helps, we just can collectively help build our body of knowledge and support, I think, locally and across the world, just to really help us look inward and find that we can become much better, or that we are much better than we think we are. Yeah.
That's beautiful, man. I really appreciate that. And I honor the fact that you came here and shared your story and opened up your heart. And I know that the more we all talk about this, the more it's going to help. So, Andre, thank you so much for coming here and doing this.
Thank you, friend. Great to talk.
That concludes this edition of the Stoned Ape Reports. Thank you for listening. Please follow us on Instagram at Stoned Ape Comedy and subscribe to our newsletter at www.stonedapecomedy.com. Again, thanks for listening, and catch you next time, Stoned Apes.